Hello and welcome to episode 24 of the Not Yet Adults podcast. I, of course, am one of your hosts, Collin Geffrey, joined by the one and only Eric Zayas.
I'm not even going to fight it anymore. That is your intro. I just have to accept it.
Dude, it's your intro. I just deliver it every time. It's belongs to you. So, Eric, we do this podcast twice a week. It's a big deal. We have topics and all that stuff, and it's all very exciting. But before we get into that today, and I did not tell you about this in the pre-show, I have an announcement. There's a announcement that's relevant to this podcast. As of this week, between SoundCloud and podcast services, not counting YouTube, just the audio audience, we have passed 1,000 plays on this podcast.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and I don't know what's going on. We've been popping off on SoundCloud lately. Once every few days, a random podcast will just shoot up like 50 or 60 views. And I don't know, listen, I'm used to YouTube. I don't know if that's like Russian bots or some sort of glitch or something, but Nostalgia was the most recent one. It had like 10 or 15 listens, then it shot up to like 60 2 days ago. So yeah, we just passed 1,000 listens. Thank you all so much for your continued support. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. We're really in the big times now.
We're in the big times now, man. We got to figure out what we're going to do with our Lamborghini we're about to buy.
I'm going to quit my job.
Do it. No, don't do that. Nope, don't do that. Bad idea.
I love how you won't even humor it. You're just like, nope, don't.
I love that spirit of like, I'm going to leave the secure thing to go chase my dream. I love that. But at the same time, it's like, well, don't be stupid, you know? Like it's smart, but don't be stupid. That's all. But speaking of not being stupid, Eric, what do we have to talk about today? That was a bad transition, but it's fine.
Today, Colin, I think we should talk about cleanliness and hygiene and organization and all the things that revolve around basically keeping your life clean and organized and in order.
It's next to godliness, some might say. Cleanliness is an interesting one for me because I had just an absolute like 180 complete like paradigm shift like 4 or 5 years ago. I was someone who did not care about cleanliness at all. I sort of love that absent-minded professor lifestyle of like kind of brilliant, but you're a slob a little bit. And so I kind of, I don't know if it was consciously or not, but I sort of embraced that for a long time.
I feel like it's not as cool doing the absent-minded absent-minded professor kind of way of cleanliness if you're not a professor.
Then you're just absent-minded. Then you're just a mess up. Yeah, it's pretty weird. And so my room would be dirty, and I didn't take much pride in my appearance, and that's not because I haven't had confidence. I've always been a pretty confident person. It was just I really didn't care. And then around, I'm gonna say, probably about 16, 17, I couldn't really tell you what changed, but I just completely flipped, and now like I'm incredibly OCD about just everything. And like I have to have my room in a very particular way, and it has to always be clean. And my clothes, I always have to have like folded and hung up, and I have certain ones that go on certain hangers, and they have to be in a certain order. It just like very, very, very. I mean, I don't mean to offend anyone who does, struggle with OCD, but OCD is how I would describe it. Is I'm just very particular about how stuff is stored, and sort of a byproduct of that is I consider myself to have a pretty good level of cleanliness and sort of hygiene about myself. But anyway, so that's kind of the broad strokes version of my history with being clean or lack thereof. What about you? What's your relationship with cleanliness been over the years?
Well, I don't remember precisely like when I started. I guess it's I mean, this is a running theme of our podcast, but I'm very similar to you are, where like I wasn't very clean as a youngin', and now as an adult I wouldn't say like super obsessive compulsive about it, but there definitely needs to be an organization. But at the same time, it's kind of like I don't know how many of our listeners are like this, who will relate to this, but for me, my room is, at first glance, looks messy, but then if you look at it through my eyes, you can see kind of the method to the madness. And like my desk where I have my computer, it's full of like, there's stuff all over the desk. There's not like any room to like put any more papers down or anywhere like to put my hands, really. But if you look at it, if there was a grid put over the desk, you can see where everything's kind of like organized and more like, oh, like this pile is like in these squares and it's meant to have these stuff and this stuff, and like the way everything's stacked, it's in a particular way so I can grab everything and know where everything is really easily. So it like looks like a mess, but it's definitely, it's like an organized mess, and that's kind of how I have my room and a lot of my personal spaces.
That kind of reminds me of like how my dad's workshop is out in the garage of like you look at it and it looks like 4 or 5 hurricanes have been through there and just everything is everywhere. But if you ask him to find something, he can find it right away. Like it makes sense to him. And so it can be very intimidating when it's not your mess looking at something, but when you do have a level of organization to it, it's just finding something that works for you, I think. What about your hygiene? Like how has that changed over the years? You're showering, your self-care, your hair, all of that sort of stuff.
Oh God, if I was talking to like junior high Eric Zayas, it was so gross. I had like much longer hair. It was like down to my shoulders. Because I think there was a moment in my time in my childhood when I just didn't want to get my hair cut at all, and so it got really long, and I didn't wash it very often. So it was like this weird, gross, kind of wavy haircut that goes down to the shoulders, and like there's a part right in the middle, so it was like right at the top of my forehead, all the way back straight, and it was just and like it would touch my hair and it was all greasy, so I'd break out all the time. It was real gross. And then like, when high school ended, I realized like, oh, I look gross and need to like start taking better care of myself. So I cut my hair like shorter, but it still had some length to it. And then now the way I have my hair cut, it's like pretty short, and like brushed back, and I like regularly shampoo my hair. Not every day. I heard you're not supposed to do it every day because something about the natural oils your scalp produces is good for your hair. But I definitely shampoo my hair multiple times a week now, and wash my face, and so the acne has subsided for the most part. Also, I'm pretty sure I'm done with puberty, so I don't think I'm gonna break out as much as I did back then nowadays. But also, I definitely I don't know. It's as a kid, like personal hygiene, showering regularly, brushing teeth regularly, seen as like a chore, and has the negative connotation in the sense that it's a responsibility. So you kind of want to avoid it or do it as little as possible. But then as an adult, it's seen as responsibility still. But like honestly, I've gone so like, I mean, this is true, I'm sure, of a lot of people. I've gotten so used to it that when I go a day without it, it feels gross. Like if I don't brush my teeth for a day because I forgot to, or I'm like camping or like hanging out at a friend's house all day after spending the night, and I don't have my toothbrush with me, I kind of feel like dirty, and it's like I feel unsettled. And then when I get home and finally get to like shower, brush my teeth, then it's like, okay, I'm good now.
And you mentioned in middle school sort of that idea of like, oh, it was really gross. I wasn't really putting any effort into it. I feel like, and obviously everyone's different, but at least for me at that age, I feel like it was similar for you of like putting effort and work into my appearance was for everyone around me and not really for me. And I was kind of like, well, I don't really care what they think of me. I like myself. I'm fine with myself. I don't really care. I'm not trying to impress anyone, basically. And so that's where like the lack of effort came in, at least for me.
I think vanity is like, it's kind of looked down upon because of people who are vain, and like seen as people who are like take themselves too seriously, or maybe like try to live up to a socially constructed status quo a little bit too much. But vanity has an importance to it in the sense that, if you don't have a sense of like, I need to look good because it's a part of like culture looking good. If you don't have that sort of vanity, you're not going to take care of yourself, and then there's health risks to that, obviously. And like also like there's social risk in the sense of like, if you don't take care of yourself and you're trying to get a job, you'll be less likely to get a job if you go and interview and you look like someone who doesn't care, because then they see that and they think, well, on one hand, this is kind of messed up, but this is just a human thing. They don't want to hire someone who they think smells bad or doesn't look good. And also on the second hand, it could extend to the work, because if they see someone who doesn't take care of themselves, well, then this person's not trying. How do I know they're gonna like try it all for the job at hand?
I think quite simply, I mean, you touched on it totally, but just to put it another way, I think it's just demonstrating that you care about the people around you, you care about the setting you're in, whether it's a job or school or you're in a relationship or whatever it is. Just putting that effort in to say this is important about me enough to send a positive image, you know?
If you don't take care of yourself, then it, you know, it's easy to believe that you won't take care of like anyone else or any other responsibilities you have.
And like that's the bare minimum responsibility is like take care of yourself. And so if you're not sending the message that you can do that, then why would people trust you with any more than that? I feel like. So I mean, I feel like you touched on most of the hygiene stuff. For me, just a couple of things to mention that maybe are a little bit different about us. I don't know about you, but I don't shower every day. I shower every other day. Just because living in Spokane was a very, very dry climate, you dry out your skin very quickly if you shower every day. And so I've always gone like 4 showers a week ish. I shampoo my hair once a week, and that's because I found every shampoo I've ever used in my life has made my hair just feel very just dead and dried out and awful. And I hate the feeling. And I had a friend that told me it was because of the sulfates that are in shampoo. They react with different hair types in different ways. And so about a year ago, I started using this all natural product. It's called Wen. It's like this designer shampoo conditioner hybrid kind of thing.
Is it spelled W-E-N?
Yeah.
Okay, I've seen that before in shops and heard about it.
Yeah. And I convinced my folks that's been my Christmas gift for the last 2 years because it's like I think it's like $90 for one bottle or something. It's like way too expensive, but it's all I found that works for my hair. So I only use it once a week and I make a bottle last a really long time. But that's what I use. And that's like my sort of self-indulgent thing. Like I'm gonna take a long shower. I'm gonna use my Wen once a week and just get it all through my hair and all that. And then yeah, it's pretty similar to you. I don't really have any sort of a skincare regimen. I got out on the other side of puberty and I have pretty clear skin, so I'm lucky in that regard. We both have beards, obviously, so I'm just once a week, sometimes not even that. I run my razor through on a 3 millimeter and just do an even shave all throughout. And then on my neck, I do just a little bit of cleaning with a straight edge. But yeah, that's about it for personal hygiene goes. I feel like you and I are pretty similar there. It's nothing super crazy or super out there.
When we stand next to each other, I think besides the glasses, we have pretty similar faces.
Well, and I wear contacts, so like we could be the same. Like yeah, because I wore glasses quite a bit at PLU, especially my first year there. Moving on, kind of from hygiene. What about cleanliness? I mean, we think of hygiene as almost like internal cleanliness of like you and the parts of you, but what about sort of this external cleanliness in the space you live in?
When I lived off campus like for the last year at PLU, it was a 2-story house that had me and 3 other people living in one bathroom. So we had to like keep a pretty like strict chore chart or with like varying cleanliness responsibilities. Like one week one person would like sweep the floors, and another week someone would clean the kitchen, another week someone would clean the bathroom. And the bathroom was a big one because there was a lot of, it was me and 3 other women, so there was a lot of like hair care products and like and beauty stuff kind of scattered all around. But so it was definitely another example of them being a method to the madness. And it was a sort of situation where if you didn't like do your chore for that week, everything kind of fell apart. And so it was like it was strict because like there was so much cleaning that needs to be done constantly. So anyone who would like slack was making it a problem for everyone else. So for me, like when I left school and or graduated rather, and came back home, that mentality kind of stuck with me. Maybe not at first. I think I was kind of lazy the first couple weeks when we went back, but then I was like, I kicked back into gear and got back into like living down my own mode, where if I don't keep things clean on a regular basis, I would just feel the sense of like everything's gonna fall apart. So yeah, the one big thing that I don't really take care of as much as I should is dusting. I just kind of let things, sit, and so things just sort of collect dust, and if there's one big thing I need to improve on, it's dusting for sure.
I am completely the same way with dusting, and I don't know why that is. I feel like keeping your room or your house or whatever it is clean is like an A minus. Like you just barely got an A, and dusting is like the extra step to get the A plus. And I'm just like, I don't know if I care that much, even though like I'm allergic to dust mites, so I should be dusting all the time. That's like something I definitely need to be doing. But yeah, I'm totally the same way. I don't know what it is about dusting. It's just hard to go that extra last step.
What's your like philosophy with like room or bathroom organization?
It is the same philosophy I have with interior decorating, and that is minimalism. I want as few things in my space as I can possibly have, uh, while still using my room to the fullest. And so that's like when people get me gifts or people try and tell me how to decorate things, I'm like, I appreciate it, but literally, I don't want freaking anything here. I want this to be as empty as it can possibly be.
You want your room to be as empty as your soul?
As empty as my soul, if not emptier, which is hard to do. But yeah, I just like having that open space. I love just being able, and like I'm neurotic's not the right word, but like I like pace around and talk to myself and think about stuff, and just like I need space to just move and think and be. And so I like having a big open room where I can just pace about and look around and stuff. And so that's kind of my philosophy. I don't really have any furniture in my room. I have a dresser, a desk, and a bed, and that's it.
I was about to say, I thought you meant like you have no furniture and it's like you just sleep on the floor.
I sleep on the carpet. Yeah, yeah. I sleep on the carpet on one blanket and a pillow, and that's it. No, but like my bed doesn't have a frame. It's just a mattress on a like the steel welded sort of undercarriage that sits in the corner. And yeah, it's kind of the minimalist thing. I'm the same way with my bathroom. I was sharing my bathroom actually with my brother for the last few months until he finally just moved back upstairs. He's in the upstairs bedroom now. And so now I have the bedroom, or excuse me, the bathroom to myself. And there was a couple week period there where I wasn't cleaning it because it was all his junk in there. And then I realized, wait a minute, he's not in here anymore. The only reason this is dirty is because I'm not cleaning it. This is all my mess. And so this last weekend I went in and I did a deep cleaning. I did the tub and the shower and the walls and floor and mirror and sink and all that. And so now I have a clean bathroom again, which is really nice. And there's freaking nothing in it. It's beautiful. But yeah, it's really minimalism for me. That's sort of like our rooms and our bathroom, which I feel like is the area that to a certain extent we have total control over. What about the rest of the house? Because we both live with our family still. How do you feel seeing the messes around the house and seeing everyone else's messes that aren't necessarily your jurisdiction, but that you still have to kind of deal with?
Well, actually, with my household, and this is one thing I'm concerned about when I'm moving out, because as far as like the rest of the house, I, I mean, but other than the bathroom, which even though I share it with my sister, um, there's a huge responsibility to like continually clean that. The rest of the house gets mostly cleaned by my like parents. So one thing I'm concerned about with moving out is that um, like things like vacuuming and stuff I might slack on, and if my other roommates are slacking on it, then it could be a problem. So I really need to get back into the mode of like, you know, feeling that cleanliness is not just a necessity but also like a priority, I guess. As far as like cleaning the rest of the house, I don't really do much, but I want to like get more into the mode of like vacuuming and cleaning kind of all over in a general sense, so that when I move out, I'm continually in that mode and more motivated to clean because of like how important it is.
Vacuuming in particular, I feel like is so liberating because one, it's easy and fast. It doesn't take that much effort. And two, like once you're done, it just feels so much nicer. Your floor looks new and everything's nice. You don't have food on the floor, and it's like it's just so liberating. I feel like to get vacuuming done.
I don't know. It's for me. I do it and the cord gets tangled, and it's like it's a whole thing.
I am fascinated that we haven't perfected vacuuming technology yet in 2018 because I've never used a vacuum that I didn't have to do something weird with the cord or it didn't get bunched up or something dumb.
I wonder if there's a company that makes battery powered vacuum cleaners, because if there is no such a thing, how do I need to like patent that?
Or better yet, just have it solar charged, and you sit it in the sunlight. It solar charges, and then you go use your vacuum. And
I feel like someone might steal the vacuum if you have it outside by itself, and it's a solar powered vacuum, so it's probably really expensive.
that's a fair point. Secondary point: make an artificial sun like in Spider-Man 2, and have it inside your house to charge the vacuum.
This might be a little bit. I think we're getting a little too pricey on the technology requirements for this vacuum.
All right, well, all I'm saying is it worked for Doc Ock pretty well. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I mean, everyone has that thing. I guess with you, it sounds like it's vacuuming. For me, it's dusting. Of like that thing we just don't like doing. I will say for me, as much as I love my parents and my siblings, it's really frustrating because like in the afternoons, I usually make it a point to go clean something just to kind of like contribute in some way to the household. And so whether that's cleaning the kitchen by sort of, doing the dishes or the countertops or whatever, or doing laundry or whatever it may be, I try and do something just to like contribute. And on the one hand, I feel good about doing that because I know that I'm helping them out. But on the other hand, I swear to God, within 2 hours, it's back to how it was. And that is so frustrating to me of like taking the hour to go up and do all the dishes and clean the whole kitchen and vacuum the rugs and all of that. And then 2 hours later, it looks like I didn't do anything.
Yeah, dishes, doing the dishes and taking care of the dishes back at the house I lived off campus with 3 other people. That was a big like blow to the like I don't know if self esteem is the right word, but it was a real blow to like my heart when I would clean all the dishes and make everything look nice, and then literally with like in maybe 2 days, the sinks would be full of dishes again, and then it's like, what? Why did I even try that hard if I'm just gonna like, it's like that Linkin Park song. You try so hard and got so far, but in the end it didn't matter. But with the dishes,
It's exactly like that. Yeah. Exactly like that. And like, I mean, you lived in a house off campus. Part of the reason I didn't want to do that is because, when I lived in the dorm I didn't have a roommate. It was just me. I would clean my dorm once a week and I don't really make a mess. I clean up after myself. So it was just always clean. And that's like the freaking best feeling to me. And coming back to live with my folks again, as we've talked about ad nauseum on this podcast, it's really hard for me because I am kind of a neat freak and I do get very OCD about those sorts of things. And when I clean something and know that I cleaned it and that it's just freaking back to normal, it's like I feel like I have no control. Like no matter what I do, there's messes that I did not cause that I still have to put up with. You know what I mean?
it really is a metaphor for life. Like, you try to have like you try to make change and control, and then the next day you realize, oh well, the universe had other plans.
It's Mr. Incredible's opening monologue from Incredibles, where he's like, "Sometimes I wish the world would just stay saved for 10 minutes." Like it's totally that. And of course, I am not losing sight of the fact that I'm living somewhere that's a very nice house, rent free, and a lot of people would kill to be in the position. And so I know that I'm just sitting here lamenting about my first world problems. So Eric, we've talked about hygiene, sort of internal cleanliness. We've talked about sort of our rooms and our homes and sort of that external cleanliness. What about sort of like organization or like kind of an abstract cleanliness of like your soul and your schedule and your life? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, everybody who knows me knows that like I have like a pretty definitely a scheduler, and like I keep a schedule, and I have like a third party app on my phone that's dedicated to like it's a reminder app. So every now and then I'll just be hanging out with friends. I'll get a reminder, and they'll be like, "Oh, that reminds me, I have to do this." And they like all my friends and family know me for that kind of, and I keep that like it's like a day to day thing. Like I make reminders for when I have to go to work and when I have like other responsibilities like chores and whatnot, and that sort of keeps me sane, knowing that like even if I'm gonna forget something that I need to do, like this like phone that I might as well have attached to my body by how often I keep it near me is gonna yell at me and tell me, "Hey, remember that thing you're supposed to do, dummy? No, go do it." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you, past me, for having the foresight to remind future me and present me now to do that." And at PLU, like it was kind of a catch-22 because with all the stuff we had to do with classes and other responsibilities, we had to like keep reminders on such a regular basis that like having a GCal for your schedule was a pretty like culturally what's the word I'm looking for? It was like a regular thing for every student to have that and keep like almost minute to minute reminders. And it kept me sane in the sense of like it was good to like keep a schedule and make sure that I wouldn't forget anything I had to do because there was a lot to do. But also at the beginning of the day when I'd look at my schedule for the day and I would see the mountain of things I had to do that were like minute to minute reminders. That would give me a huge amount of anxiety and would like make me think, okay, well, I don't have to do this today. I can do it the next day or the next week. And so I'd push things off because I couldn't like for some days or some weeks I couldn't face all the stuff I had to do. So I would have to procrastinate. And so it was like, on one hand, it kept me sane. On the other hand, it was a huge source of anxiety. And it was became like a balancing act all those 3 years.
You mentioned that sort of schedule or calendar and like having that minute to minute stuff of each day figured out. Especially like in my last semester at PLU, there would honest to God be days where from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I had like 20 minutes that wasn't scheduled for something. And like that at the beginning of the day is the freaking worst feeling in the world because you feel like a slave to your calendar after a while. You're like, I'm not even living my life. I'm just, going from point A to point B. Like my calendar is already decided for me, which I guess at some point was me deciding for me, but it sure doesn't feel that way when you're just going from point to point on your calendar or to-do list. Where do you come down on sort of to-do lists and scheduling stuff for yourself that way? Do you feel like that helps you get it done quicker, or do you feel like it just overwhelms you, kind of that anxiety you were talking about?
I mean, like, it helped me, like, keep my life organized. It didn't necessarily make me do things quicker, because if I had an assignment, as soon as it was assigned, I would immediately schedule time to do it, and then when I see the reminder the first time, I'd just be like, oh, I don't really feel like doing this now. It's not due for a while, so I would just keep procrastinating.
And then you're frantically typing 800 words to finish the essay the morning that it's due.
Exactly, yeah. I would end up still procrastinating, so it didn't prevent that. I would really just have to look within and look at myself in the mirror and say, like, okay, you're going to do this now, whether you like it or not, because, like, you can't push this off to the last minute like you've been doing. But I was more just like because I've used to be a really forgetful person. I think I'm not as much as I used to be anymore. I would basically have these crutches, the reminder app, GCal, to help aid with that forgetfulness. But because it was a crutch, it didn't help me become less forgetful. It would just be something I would like depend on. And so, I don't know, it was like it helped and it hurt me at the same time.
No, I totally get that. When I was at PLU, I was doing the same thing, and that's because you're running off of so many people's schedules and you have so much going on that you can't really hope to remember it all just in your head. You have to have some sort of stored, archived version of what you need to get done so that it can remind you when your brain fails because you have so much going on. But yeah, I mean, I will say since graduating, I've kind of had this. I mean, the paradigm has shifted. It's less things that you have to do and more choosing what things you should do with your time. It's really up to you. There's very few things that have to get done every day, but there are things that you probably should do as sort of an investment in your future. And so for me, I've kind of gravitated away from the to-do list or the calendar and just kind of gone a little bit more with, I guess it sounds tacky, but like trusting my gut of like, what's the thing that feels right to do right now? What's the thing that you keep thinking about or you just can't get out of your head or whatever? And that's typically the thing I spend the day or that amount of time on. There's this scene in *Halt and Catch Fire*, which is my favorite show, that I always think about when I'm thinking about scheduling or what creative project to work on or whatever it is. And it's these two characters. They've spent weeks on this whiteboard, like planning out what the next idea they're going to chase down is. And then one of them is like suggesting to the other one, okay, let's circle the 5 best ideas on the whiteboard. And the other character looks at it for a second and then takes the eraser and he erases the whole freaking board that they spent weeks on. And he's like, what the heck did you just do? And he says, if anything on there was important, we'll remember it tomorrow. And I love that so much of like, you can make list after list and schedule after schedule and all that. But at the end of the day, if you don't remember something and you don't keep thinking about it, how important really is it? And like, that's kind of a dangerous way to live your life. And obviously some people aren't in a position where they're able to do that. But for me, I'm kind of just like, I kind of keep things up in my head right now. And if it comes into my mind, then it's important enough to do. And if it doesn't, then I just kind of leave it on the back burner.
I've heard that philosophy before. That actually reminds me of something my mom always says, like when I'm trying to remember something, I was like, oh, I was going to tell you something. It's on the tip of my tongue. She'll say like, oh, if it's important, it'll come to you. Like, just don't, her thing is like, if you're trying to remember something, don't think about like, and as soon as you forget it, if naturally you come back to it, or if you come back to it because it's important and it just like will naturally integrate back into your life, then it'll like, you'll have a click moment and it'll come back to you. But for me, that gives me so much. I don't like when I'm close to remembering something, purposefully giving up and going away from it. So like, I'm always worried that like, as much as I'd love to agree with that philosophy, I don't fully, that like if it's important, you'll remember it. Because I remember this one moment at PLU, and I know we're getting close to, or we've actually passed the time. One like really quick story I want to say, that I once got a parking ticket at PLU, And I immediately was like, no, that's BS, because it was like I was near but not quite in front of this entryway to like a parking lot, and the ticket was said I was blocking the parking lot. So I took a picture of my car and like tried to get a good angle to show that I wasn't actually blocking anything, and I was planning on contesting this. So I went to like I don't think it was the DMV. It was basically a building you went to contest it, and there was a bunch of different floors, and I had to go upstairs, and they said, oh, you actually have to go to line downstairs, and it was like that kind of maze of things. And then I eventually went to a person that says, okay, on this date on December, you'll go to court and you'll contest it. And so I was like, okay, and I made a reminder on my phone to do that. Well, that was like, it was like several months, and like the ticket was only for like $25, so it wasn't a huge deal, but it was something that like it's more of a principle at this point. So a few months go by, and in the time between that moment and the court date, which was, I think it was going to be like in December or something, I had my phone stolen. And so all the reminders on my phone were like gone because it wasn't saved to a cloud. It was just on my phone. So when I got a new phone, I was like, oh, well, I can remember certain things, but certain things I forget. I've forgotten. So I made new reminders, but I was like, oh, I'm forgetting some things, I'm sure. But, it's like my mom says, if it was important, I'll remember it. And I don't remember certain things, so it must not have been important. So then like January comes and I get a bill in the mail for $100 because I missed my court date. And so not only do I have to pay the ticket, but I have to pay this additional fine for missing a court date that I made that I promised to be there. And at that point, I was like, well, there's no point in contesting this because this was just like a fault on me entirely. So I have to take full responsibility even more so. So for that reason alone, I kind of like don't agree with the whole like, if it's important, you'll remember it so much, because I know how dumb I am. I know how forgetful I am.
I don't think that's you being dumb. I think it's the truth with organization and cleanliness, just like everything else, is that you have to find what works for you. And some people, you can put it up in your head and your subconscious will yank it back out when you need to. And some people need that list in front of them. It doesn't mean one way is better than the other. It's finding that, kind of that comfortable fit for you. And yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That is kind of sad though. It's with the court thing. It's like going double or nothing and losing.
Yeah.
But I mean, you live and you learn. It is what it is. And in the grand scheme of things, for a parking ticket, it could have been a lot worse. So Eric, we are long in the tooth here, admittedly so, but if we could kind of bookend this discussion about sort of organization and cleanliness and all these things, what's one either short or long-term goal you'd like to set for yourself to improve your cleanliness as a person?
Well, a goal I have that is both short-term and long-term is that I really want to make cleanliness in terms of like dusting and vacuuming and things of that nature more of the chore parts of it. I want to integrate it more into my life and make it more basically, like, for me, I still feel like as far as priorities go, that though I consider those two low of a priority, I want to get in my mind and in my heart, I want to raise that. And as far as the list of priorities I have, and like treat those as like more important than I do. What about you?
I think I'm just gonna piggyback off of you just a little bit more specifically. I'm gonna say dusting. I'm just gonna start dusting once a week. I'm gonna dust my room, and I don't know if people dust bathrooms. I'm not sure if that's something you really do, but yeah, I'm just gonna dust my room once a week. That's gonna be my very tangible, very attainable goal. Is just get rid of that dust, and I'm allergic to dust mites, so I probably should do that. Yeah, I'm gonna start dusting, and we'll see how that goes. We'll have a check-in next week and see how our cleaner living lives are going.
Yeah, that works so well when we had the goal to like cook something, and then the next week when we recorded podcast, we realized, oh, we just forgot to cook.
Maybe we'll do a cooking part 2 at some point. Who knows? There's no rules with the Not Yet Adults podcast. We just kind of do whatever we want that week. Yeah. Well, folks, this has been episode 24 of the Not Yet Adults podcast. What is something that you would like to be more organized or cleanly about in your life? Let us know in the comments below. And remember that this is Not Yet Adults, which comes to you every Monday and Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time on YouTube, SoundCloud, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and all other sorts of podcast services. We're also on social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Not Yet Adults, as well as on our own subreddit, r/Not Yet Adults as well. If you could do us a solid, if you've listened this far, head on over to Apple Podcasts or iTunes if you're on iOS and leave us a rating and review. All it takes is 2 minutes out of your day, and it's an enormous help to us because it makes more people see the podcast, which in turn means more people get to listen to what we're doing here. And what we're doing here is something we're pretty proud of, so we would appreciate the time out of your day. We will be back on Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific time talking about something new, and we're very much looking forward to it. So thanks for listening, and until next time, this has been Not Yet Adults.
Bye-bye.